welcome to part 2 of my jazz musicianship video series. In this part, we're going to talk about performing large jazz ensemble music, so big band music, and a lot of the tips that I gave in the first video on small group performing apply. So think about your listening skills and thinking about sort of watching for gestures, especially from the conductor, because a lot of times in big bands there is somebody actually conducting it, and tapping to inform with your foot, sort of internalizing rhythm. I think some other especially important things to do in large jazz ensembles are to listen across sections, and that can apply to really any large ensemble. Can apply to choirs, can apply to orchestras, but in big bands too, you really want to sort of listen across sections. What does that mean? So you're not only listening to your section, you're not only listening to the section next to you, but you are listening to all of the sections of the band. So you're listening to the trumpets, you're listening to the saxes and the trombones and the rhythm section. And so you're listening to all of those things and responding appropriately to all of those things. If you just respond to one of those things, or if you are just listening to your own section, then you do actually lose a lot, because there are almost certainly going to be some parts in the music where it is, the trumpets and the trombones are doing something together. And so you really just want to be listening to both, and listening to how the rhythm section plays in that context. And so that's an incredibly important thing to do when you are playing in a large ensemble, especially. Additionally, I think watching for gestures from the conductor is more important than ever in a large ensemble, because they're going to be giving you cues. They're going to be, giving you the beat. In a lot of cases, they're going to be doing all of those things that a conductor does. And so you're going to be really, really watching them. And occasionally they will step aside and, let you do your thing. And I think that's great, because that gives the musicians a lot of autonomy, and you will have, that means that they trust you and that you can perform this music. And so sometimes they will step to the side and just let you do your thing. But equally so, just, be watching for them at all times. Now, the other thing to really, really pay attention to, and this applies especially in the context of big band music, when everything is really, really written out, fully notated, is to actually learn your part. Because if you don't learn your part, it's not going to work with the rest of the ensemble. So learn your part so that it will sound good with the rest of the group, and people will know if you don't learn your part. I mean, that goes for any ensemble, but big bands, all the same. Learn your part, make sure you have it under your fingers, and just practice it outside of rehearsal, enough that you can play it confidently on your own, and then be able to play it with the ensemble. So that's really, really important. I know that as a piano player, it's very different, because in small group music, it's basically lead sheets and that's pretty much it, or there's no music at all. And in these larger ensembles, a lot of it is fully notated. Sometimes it's so fully notated that there aren't even any chord symbols. So you just have to really, really learn, really, really sort of get the part under your fingers. Now, another incredibly important thing is, just like in small group music, chordal instruments should not play over each other. Even if it's notated in the music, you still got to be pretty careful. So just really be aware that your other chordal instrument fellows are playing, and make sure to leave them space. Oftentimes, big band music is sort of rigid in the way that it's fully notated, but it also gives you a lot of improvisation room. And so just be aware of that and take advantage of that to not play, but to actually leave space. That's something that's really sort of forgotten about, honestly. I mean, I forget about it all the time, and I play with a lot of other people who forget about it, so just make sure not to play over other chordal instruments. Also, I think this goes for all music, obviously, but you really just want to keep on top of the beat. I find that I personally struggle to do that more in playing in big band than playing with a combo, because there's a lot more going on, and so I either tend to get lost or just tend to rush or drag. So just really stay on top of it. Don't get lost if you can help it. Really just make sure that you're going with everybody else, and that you're counting correctly, because some of those charts do have some pretty tricky rhythms and things like that. And so you just want to be aware that you're counting, that you're staying right on top of the beat. Again, outside of rehearsal, in your own practice time, be practicing your part, obviously, and be practicing it with a metronome of the tempo that the chart is, or if the conductor has a different tempo that they're doing it at, maybe they're doing it a few clicks faster or slower. Just be aware of that, write that in your music, and then be able to practice that on your own. Now, on the subject of writing things in your music, always bring a pencil to your rehearsal. There are so many times where either I don't bring a pencil or somebody else doesn't bring a pencil, and it's just a pain, because then when the conductor is saying something that's really important, you have to write it down, then either I'm having to give my pencil to somebody, or they're having to give their pencil to me, and it's just sort of inefficient. And it would be great if everybody had their own pencils. So just make sure to bring a pencil to your rehearsal. I mean, that's something that should be obvious, but again, is sort of often forgotten about. So again, just bring something to write with, and if they give you something really specific to write down, then write it down and practice it. If it's something different that's in the music, if they say rewrite the second half of this measure, then as a dotted eighth note and then a quarter note, I don't know, and then you have to relearn it. So just make sure to put in the time to be able to do that. And finally, if you are soloing over a pre-existing background line, just make sure that you are at least sort of conforming to that background line, at least at first, that you aren't going like too far outside and making it super dissonant immediately. If you want to go farther outside later in your solo, then I think that's fine, but I think it's just good practice soloing in general to start simple, because if you start really complicated and you're doing all these dissonant things, then it's less likely that you have a place to go in your solo. I'm not saying you won't have a place to go. I'm just saying it's harder to have a place to go in your solo if you are going crazy at the beginning. So I think that's just good practice, but especially if there's some sort of background line in the horns, or other sort of thing that's written in the music underneath your solo that you're having to work with, or perhaps work against, who knows, then just sort of make sure that you're at least conforming a little bit to that, because just to ensure that it will sound at least reasonably good. So those are my tips for you for performing large ensemble music. I hope this was helpful for you, and be sure to subscribe to this channel, like and share this video, and leave a comment if you like or dislike this video. So thanks for watching.